Welcome to today's story. It's about a billionaire whose only son was born paralyzed and autistic. Doctors said he would never walk, never speak, and never live a normal life. But everything changed when a new maid came into their home, a woman who saw what others couldn't. What she discovered inside that mansion would shock everyone and uncover the real reason behind the boy's suffering. If this is your first time watching the channel, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. The Harrison mansion sat quietly on the green hills of Vermont, shining under the morning light like a piece of glass. Inside lived Richard Harrison, one of the richest men in America. He built his empire from nothing, yet his heart was heavy with sadness. His son, Ethan, was born different. His body was weak, his legs refused to move, and his eyes often stared into empty space. Ethan was only 12, but life had already been too hard for him. Richard tried everything to help his son. The best hospitals, the best doctors, even foreign specialists, but nothing worked. They all said the same thing: Ethan would never walk. The man who could buy anything now realized money could not fix everything. The mansion grew silent and cold, filled with nurses who came and left, until one day a young maid named Claire arrived. She didn't come from wealth, but she carried something far more powerful: kindness. From the moment she stepped into that house, something began to shift. She watched Ethan carefully. She noticed things no one else paid attention to. His eyes moved when certain people came near, and his hands twitched slightly when someone spoke too loud. She couldn't explain it, but something inside her told her this boy's condition was not what it seemed.
And as the days passed, Claire's curiosity turned into fear, because the closer she got to the truth, the more the mansion began to feel alive. Claire had never seen a house so big in her life. Each hallway stretched like a maze, with walls covered in family portraits and antique clocks that ticked softly in the silence. Everything was spotless, yet the place felt cold, too perfect, too quiet. When she met Mr. Harrison for the first time, he didn't smile. He just nodded and said, "Do your job, and you'll be fine." His voice was deep and tired, like a man who had seen too much disappointment. Her main duty was to clean Ethan's room, prepare his clothes, and help the nurses when they needed an extra hand. The boy was always in his wheelchair, sitting near the window that overlooked the garden, and his soft eyes followed the birds outside. He never spoke, not a word, but something about the way he looked at things told Claire that he understood more than people thought. On her third day, while dusting the bookshelf, she felt his eyes on her. When she turned, Ethan was watching her quietly. His fingers moved slightly on the armrest. It was small but clear. She smiled at him gently and said, "You like books, don't you?" He blinked twice, like a silent answer. It made her heart soften. That night, as Claire lay in her small room beside the kitchen, she thought about Ethan's eyes again. They didn't look empty like everyone said. They looked trapped, like someone crying for help without a voice. She didn't know why, but she felt that something or someone was holding that boy back from living freely, and she was ready to find out who. A week passed, and Claire started feeling more comfortable around the mansion. She had learned the routines, the cleaning schedule, and even the quiet moods of Mr. Harrison. But Ethan's room was the only place that truly felt different, not because of the boy, but because of what she began to notice when the nights grew silent.
Every night, around midnight, she heard faint sounds coming from inside the walls near Ethan's room. It wasn't rats or pipes. It sounded like whispers, soft, low, almost human. At first, she thought she was imagining it, but one night she stopped by the door and pressed her ear close. The whispering was clearer this time, and she could swear it said the boy's name. Her heart began to race. When she opened the door, the sound stopped. Ethan was awake, staring directly at the corner of the room where the sound had come from. His eyes were wide, filled with fear. Claire slowly walked toward him, whispering softly, "It's okay, you're safe." But she could see his small hands trembling. He looked past her, like someone else was standing behind. She turned quickly, but no one was there. Just the soft hum of the air conditioner and the dim yellow light from the bedside lamp. The next morning, she tried to mention the sound to one of the nurses. The woman laughed and said, "Don't worry, dear. This house is old. You'll hear all sorts of things." But Claire wasn't convinced. She could see it in Ethan's eyes. He heard it too. That evening, as she tucked him in, she whispered, "Don't worry, Ethan. I believe you." For the first time, his lips moved slightly, forming something close to a smile. And in that small, quiet smile, she felt a promise that she was getting closer to the truth. The next morning, the house was brighter than usual. Sunlight spilled across the marble floors, but the warmth didn't reach Claire's heart. She couldn't stop thinking about the whispering in Ethan's room. It wasn't normal, and she was sure there was more to it than just old house noises. While cleaning the hallway near Ethan's room, she noticed a door she had never seen open before. It was painted the same color as the wall, almost hidden, with a small golden lock. When she asked another maid about it, the woman froze for a moment and then whispered, "That's the storage room. No one goes in there. Mr. Harrison keeps it locked." But her eyes told a different story, one filled with fear. Later that afternoon, she passed the door again. She thought she heard something behind it, a faint hum, like someone breathing. She stepped closer and held her breath. The sound was steady, soft, almost like a heartbeat. Her hands shook slightly as she reached for the knob, but it didn't move, locked tight. Then, from down the hall, she heard footsteps. She quickly turned and began dusting the nearby table.
Mr. Harrison walked past her without a word, holding a small silver key. He stopped at the locked door, unlocked it, slipped inside for a moment, then came out and locked it again. When he left, Claire stood frozen. What could he possibly keep locked in there, right beside his son's room? That night, as the house went quiet again, Claire sat up in bed, listening closely. The whispers were back. Only this time, they weren't coming from the walls. They were coming from behind that locked door. The following morning, Claire decided to clean Ethan's room earlier than usual. The boy was by the window again, staring at the garden where bright tulips grew in neat rows. She smiled at him, trying to act calm, though her heart was still uneasy from the whispers. As she wiped the glass table near his bed, something small caught her attention, a blinking red light hidden behind a flower vase. She moved the vase carefully and gasped. It was a small camera, the kind used for secret recording. She leaned closer and saw another one tucked near the bookshelf, almost invisible against the wooden frame. She looked around, scanning the corners of the ceiling. There were more. Her mind raced. Why would there be cameras in a child's bedroom? Just then, Ethan's eyes shifted toward the corner where one of the cameras was. He blinked slowly, almost like he was trying to tell her something. Claire felt a chill down her spine. She whispered softly, "You know about them, don't you?" He blinked again, twice this time. That was his yes. She stepped closer to him and whispered, "Are they watching you?" His breathing changed, and he looked frightened. He glanced toward the door as if someone might come in. Claire quickly placed the vase back to hide the light and continued cleaning like nothing happened.
That evening, she couldn't eat. She sat by the small kitchen window, thinking about the cameras. Was Mr. Harrison watching his son every second? Or was someone else? And why did Ethan look so scared of them? One thing was clear. Something inside that mansion wasn't right. And Claire was now part of it, whether she liked it or not. The next morning, the house felt heavier than usual. Even the air seemed thick. Claire moved quietly through the halls, her mind replaying what she saw. Those tiny blinking cameras watching Ethan like a prisoner. She wanted to tell someone, but who could she trust? Later that day, while folding laundry near the kitchen, Nurse Kelly walked in. She was one of the older staff members, kind, but always nervous when Mr. Harrison was around. Claire hesitated for a moment, then whispered, "Can I ask you something?" The nurse nodded slowly. Claire leaned closer and said, "Do you know about the cameras in Ethan's room?" Nurse Kelly froze, her hands clutching the folded towels. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, checking if anyone was listening. Then, in a low voice, she said, "Don't ever mention that again, not to anyone." Claire frowned. "Why? He's just a child. He deserves privacy." Kelly shook her head, whispering fast, "You don't understand. The last maid who asked questions was fired the next day. She left in tears. Mr. Harrison doesn't like people poking into his business. Just do your job, Claire, and keep your head down." Then she picked up the towels and left quickly, her footsteps echoing through the hall. Claire stood there, her heart pounding. Fired for asking questions? That only made her more certain something dark was going on.
That evening, she went to Ethan's room again. The boy looked tired, his eyes dull. She knelt beside him and whispered, "Don't worry. I'll find out what's really happening. I promise." He looked at her for a long moment, then a tear slipped down his cheek. That silent tear told her everything. He needed help, and she was the only one brave enough to give it. It was past midnight when Claire woke up to a strange sound. At first, it was faint, like footsteps moving slowly down the hallway. She sat up, her heart beating fast. The noise grew louder, slow, heavy steps stopping right outside her door. Then silence. She held her breath, staring into the dark. The doorknob turned slightly, but didn't open. A few seconds later, the steps moved away. Claire waited a full minute before slipping out of bed. She opened her door and peeked into the hallway. It was empty. The lights were dim and the house was completely still. But then, something caught her eye. Ethan's door was open. She hurried toward the room and found him awake, his eyes wide and full of fear. His wheelchair had been moved slightly away from the window and his blanket was on the floor. Claire bent down and whispered, "What happened?" Ethan's fingers pointed toward the hallway. His breathing was shaky, almost like he wanted to cry. She looked around the room and noticed something else. The camera light was off. All the tiny red lights she'd seen before were gone. The devices were still there, but dead, as if someone had cut the power to them. Suddenly, a faint voice echoed from the hallway, calling softly, "Claire." She froze. The voice was calm, deep, familiar. It was Mr. Harrison, but when she looked toward the sound, there was no one there. She quickly shut Ethan's door and whispered, "It's okay, you're safe with me."
But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. Because for the first time since she arrived, Claire realized she wasn't just working in a strange house, she was being watched too. The next morning, Claire barely spoke a word. Her hands trembled as she washed the breakfast dishes, her mind replaying the events of the night, the footsteps, Ethan's fear, and the strange voice calling her name. She needed answers. After everyone went to bed that night, she slipped quietly into Mr. Harrison's office. The room smelled of leather and old books, and the faint glow of the computer screen lit the dark walls. She hesitated, then sat at the desk. The computer wasn't password protected. Strange for a billionaire. She clicked through the files, scrolling past folders labeled Finances, Projects, and House Security.
Her heart pounded as she opened the one called Room Feeds. Inside were dozens of video clips, each marked with dates and times. She clicked the most recent one, and the screen showed Ethan's bedroom. The video was grainy, but clear enough to see everything. She fast-forwarded and froze when she saw it. Mr. Harrison entered the boy's room in the middle of the night. He wasn't talking or checking on him. He was holding something, a small metal device. He pressed it to Ethan's neck for a moment, and the boy flinched weakly. Then he whispered something she couldn't hear, placed the device back in his pocket, and walked out. Claire covered her mouth, trying not to scream. What was that? Why would a father do such a thing to his child? She copied the file onto a flash drive she found nearby and tucked it in her pocket. But as she turned to leave, she saw something else on the screen, a camera feed of her own room. Her blood ran cold. She was being watched too. Claire didn't sleep that night. She sat on her bed, clutching the flash drive in her trembling hand. Every shadow in the room felt like a pair of eyes. Every sound made her heart jump. By morning, she knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. Someone had to know the truth about what Mr. Harrison was doing. She waited until the afternoon, when Mr. Harrison was in his study, and walked in quietly. He looked up from his papers, surprised to see her there. "Claire," he said slowly, "what do you need?" Her voice shook, but she stood tall. "I know about the cameras, and I saw what you did to your son." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then his expression changed. The calmness faded from his face, replaced by something dark. He stood up slowly and walked toward her. "You don't understand what you saw. Ethan is sick. That device helps him." Claire took a step back. "Helps him? He looked terrified, Mr. Harrison. That's not help, that's torture." He stopped inches from her, his voice low and sharp. "You've been snooping where you shouldn't. I hired you to clean, not to question me." Claire clutched the flash drive in her pocket. "If you fire me, I'll go to the police. They'll see everything." Mr. Harrison's jaw tightened. He didn't speak. He just stared at her with cold, empty eyes, then finally said, "You have no idea what kind of trouble you're walking into." Claire left the study shaking, but more determined than ever. For the first time, she wasn't just the maid, she was Ethan's only hope. Claire spent the rest of the day avoiding everyone. She stayed close to Ethan's room, watching him carefully, protecting him the best she could. That evening, when the house grew quiet, she sat beside him and whispered, "Ethan, I know your father's been hurting you. I saw the video, but I promise I'll get you out of here." For the first time, she saw his eyes fill with tears. One rolled down his cheek, and his hand twitched slightly, as if trying to reach hers. Claire gently held his small fingers. That moment broke her heart. The boy couldn't speak, but she could feel everything he wanted to say. Just then, the door opened behind her. She turned quickly. Mr. Harrison stood there, his face calm but his eyes cold. "You shouldn't be in here after hours," he said. Claire stood up slowly, blocking Ethan with her body. "I know what you've done," she said. "Why would you hurt your own son?" He sighed deeply, running hand through his hair. "You think you know everything," he said quietly, "but you don't know what's inside him." Claire frowned. "Inside him? What do you mean?" Mr. Harrison's voice lowered. "Ethan isn't just sick, Claire. He's special. When he was a baby, something went wrong, not just with his body, but with what he could do. The machines around him react, lights flicker, sounds change. That's why I monitor him. I'm trying to control it." Claire shook her head. "He's just a child. You're scaring him."
Mr. Harrison looked at his son and whispered, "You have no idea what that boy is capable of." That night, Claire couldn't stop thinking about what Mr. Harrison said. "You have no idea what that boy is capable of." Those words echoed in her mind like a warning. She sat by Ethan's bed after Mr. Harrison left, holding his hand gently. The house was silent, except for the soft ticking of the clock. Then something strange happened. The light in the room flickered once, then again. Claire looked around, confused. The air grew heavy, almost electric. Ethan's eyes opened wide, and for the first time, Claire saw emotion, fear, sadness, and something powerful glowing deep inside them. The blanket near his legs moved slightly, even though no one had touched it. Then a glass of water on the table began to tremble. Claire gasped, whispering, "Ethan, are you doing this?" His lips moved slowly, forming a single word, faint but clear. "Help." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'll help you." Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway. The door burst open, and Mr. Harrison stormed in, holding the same metal device. "Stop!" he shouted. The moment he stepped forward, the lights went out completely, and the room filled with a strange humming sound. Objects around them began to lift, papers, pillows, even the wheelchair shifted slightly. Claire shielded Ethan with her arms as Mr. Harrison shouted again, "You're losing control, Ethan!" The sound grew louder until suddenly everything stopped. The lights flickered back on, and Ethan collapsed against Claire's chest, breathing hard. Mr. Harrison stood frozen, shaken and pale. Claire looked at him through tears. "You call that control?" she whispered. "He's just a child. He's scared of you." But as she held the trembling boy close, she realized something. Ethan wasn't just a victim. Whatever was inside him was stronger than anyone had imagined. The next morning came with soft rain tapping against the windows. The mansion felt different, quieter, almost peaceful. Claire sat beside Ethan's bed, still shaken by what happened during the night. The boy looked tired, but calm, his breathing slow and steady. Mr. Harrison stood by the doorway, staring at them both with guilt written all over his face. He finally spoke. "When his mother died giving birth to him," he said softly, "I blamed him. I thought he took everything from me. When the doctor said he would never walk, I tried to fix him, but I only made things worse." Claire looked at him, her voice gentle but firm. "He never needed fixing, Mr. Harrison. He just needed love." For a long moment, the man said nothing. Then he walked closer to his son, kneeling beside the bed. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered, "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry." Something changed in the air. The lights flickered once more, but this time it wasn't violent. It was soft, warm, like a spark of life. Ethan's eyes opened slowly, glowing with calm light. Claire held her breath as the boy's small fingers moved, then his legs. He lifted them, slowly, painfully, but surely. Mr. Harrison gasped, watching in disbelief as his son sat up for the first time in his life. Claire covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks.
The boy reached out, placing his small hand on his father's arm. His lips trembled, and he whispered one word. "Dad." Mr. Harrison broke down completely, hugging him tightly as tears fell freely. The mansion that once felt cold was now filled with something new: love, forgiveness, and the sound of hope being reborn. Outside, the rain stopped and sunlight broke through the clouds. And that's how a young maid helped uncover the truth that no one else dared to see: that love can heal what science cannot. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.